Opportunity to kind of get that thing back up to where it used to be, back in the good old days, where we had, people, we had sponsors at every hole, and so yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into Rick's presentation. I think we'll let Rick go, and then Bill's going to tell us a whole bunch of things that we need to remember.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Welcome from the Mercer Island Club. This is the Mercer Island Club right here. So I need to return the favor. So if you would all get you all in there, give me a big wave in here. Awesome. I've actually been at this place once before. I got certified through the mail to marry some friends of mine, and I married them right into that whole thing down there. And as soon as they said I do, it just started pouring rain. So everybody rushed inside, but they are still married today, and they're doing well. But when I joined Rotary, I was asked to join by my friend Ray Brook. He's the biking Rotarian. If any of you remember him, he biked through all 50 states and the Providences. And so he asked me, I had just given this talk on a famous person. He said, you should study Paul Harris. And I thought, that's a pretty good idea, because there's 1.2 million members, 35,000 clubs all around the world, and the number of people that he has impacted is pretty big. And so when Ray asked me to join, he said, don't be a rhino, a Rotarian in name only. So instead of a rhino, I think we should all be aardvarks. Always advancing Rotary's diverse values and Rotary's kindness. I'm joking, we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be aardvarks. But I thought it was a pretty good idea. And so I grabbed 3 books. I read these. The one on the left I would not recommend. The comic book in the middle is pretty good, and I think every Rotarian should at least thumb through A Century of Service. It's pretty big, but it's a big one. So you're going to get Paul Harris's life in about 8.5 minutes. Are you ready? And actually, I gave this for the first time, and Bill was there, and I talked to him, and he said, yeah, you should make the rounds and give this all over. So this is Paul Harris's life. He was born in Racine, Wisconsin on April 19th, 1868, and then 3 years later, he moved to Wallingford, Vermont. His dad couldn't make ends meet, couldn't provide for the family, and so he went to live with his grandfather, and we are here in this room largely because of that. He was influenced by his grandfather more than anybody else, and his grandfather was known for hard work, tolerance of other people's views, and so it heavily impacted him. And this is him at the age of 3 with a cane and a skirt. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but this is the house he grew up in. And he grew up in Vermont, so it's pretty much everything you pictured growing up in Vermont would be. He describes it as this John Whittier poem: blessings on thee, little man, barefoot boy with cheeks of tan, with thy turned up pantaloons and thy merry whistle tunes. So it was a happy childhood growing up. But then as he got a little older, he got, no picture, I don't know why that is there. It's a picture of Paul Harris when he was a little older. And he started getting into a gang. They called themselves the Rapscallions, and he got into trouble. As much trouble as you can get into in the middle of Vermont, right? I know a kid who just got picked up for armed robbery. So not that kind of trouble, but trouble like
mischief.
Yeah, mischief like this. So he's skipping school, jumping out of his window at night, hopping trains, fighting the family rooster, and putting tacks on church pews. So nothing too nefarious. But his grandfather didn't like the way he was headed, so he enrolled him in another one. I'm not sure why the pictures aren't showing up. But this is him at a military school in Vermont. And he did really well there. He did really well socially, academically, and so well that he there it is. And he got admitted to Princeton University, and he did very well at Princeton too, did socially and academically. But while he was there, he got a telegram, almost a text, a telegram from home saying, if you want to see your grandfather alive, you better come home right now. And he left right away, but he didn't make it home in time. His grandfather had died. And it really hit him hard, and he dropped out of Princeton. He was out of Princeton for a little over a year. But his grandmother pulled him aside and said, hey, your grandfather poured his life into your dad, and it didn't really turn out the way he had hoped. And then you came along, and he poured his life into you, so you should make something of your life. And it left an impression on his heart. And so he went to Iowa University, became a lawyer there. And at the commencement ceremony, the commencement speaker said, I would advise that you move to some small town for 5 years, have fun, be stupid, and then moved to the big city and started your law practice. And that really changed some of his thinking. And so he took him up, and he went on this 5-year odyssey that I think is important to go over very quickly, because I think it's another reason why we're in this room, all the things that he did. So this is the tour. This is what it looks like in the comic book, all the places that he went. But he started hunting and fishing in the Northwest here. I wish I could have fished back then when there were more fish and bigger fish. And then he was a newspaper reporter in San Francisco. He was a day laborer there. He taught at a business college in Los Angeles for a time. And then he moved to Colorado, and he was an actor for a little bit, and a newspaper reporter, and a cowboy in a ranch. And then he got tired of the mountains, and he went to Jacksonville, Florida. He was a hotel night clerk there. And then he met this guy named George W. Clark. He ran a marble and granite company there, and he hired him on, and he did really well. And Mr. Clark wanted to keep him on, but he said, "No, I'm on my odyssey still," and he left, and he went to Washington, D.C. for a time, Kentucky, and then Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, he saw a newspaper ad, and it was for a cattle ship going to England and back, and he had always wanted to see London. So he got on this cattle ship, and it was just terrible. They didn't even have beds, they didn't have utensils to eat with. It was just terrible. And he got there, and they unloaded, and they came right back. He didn't get to see anything. And so then when he got back, he jumped on a different one, and that was the experience he went. He went there, he got to see London, and he came back. And then he went to the Chicago World's Fair. He had been to Chicago before on his time through Princeton. And I think, well, I know it left an impression on him, so he went there. And then he went down to New Orleans and had a really heroic experience down there. He saved a family's life. And then he went back to Mr. Clark and said, "Hey, I can work for you." He's about halfway through his 5-year period. And he said, "Sure." And Mr. Clark wanted to keep him, so he put him in charge of all his southern states for buying and selling. And then he sent him on buying tours in London, Scotland, Italy, and the Bahamas. And he did all of that in a 5-year span. And then he told Mr. Clark, he said, "I'm off to Chicago to start my law business." And Mr. Clark said, "You don't need to go there to make money. We can make a lot of money right here." And he said, "I'm not going there to make money. I'm going there to start a life." So in 1896, he started his law practice, law lawyer right here. And it was very hard for him. He had a hard time building the practice. He was super lonely. He didn't know anybody. So for about a 9-year stretch, it was tough. And then he went with his friend to an outlying city, and he noticed how personable everybody was. This is why we wear name tags. He loved how people knew each other's name. He remembered that from back home. And he had this idea for Rotary. And it stewed in him for a little bit. And then on February 23rd, 1905, he did the very first one. This is the first 4 gentlemen that did it. And it took off. They added the service aspect of it, and it just took off like crazy. There was, I think, 15 at the next one, 30 at the next, 80, and then it went to San Francisco, Oakland, and then Seattle was number 4, as I'm sure most of us know. And it just went like gangbusters. And he met his wife, Jean Thomas Harris, in 1910. They were hiking together, and he had torn his jacket, I think. And she offered to sew it for him, and they were married 3 months later, and they stayed married the rest of his life. This is him. His medical practice, his law practice and his marriage was suffering because of how well Rotary was doing, and he was really involved. So he took a 10-year hiatus and didn't come in. He would write in, but he wouldn't visit. And then he came back, and he really toured the world, being the Rotarian who started it all. And then on January 27th, the day before my birthday, 1947, he died. And he died with more accolades and honorary PhDs and medals from countries than I have time to tell you. It was just the number of people that he has impacted throughout the world is pretty incredible. So I'll leave you with just a couple quotes. One, the foundation on which Rotary is built is friendship. On no less firm a foundation could it have stood. And I don't need to tell you here, but let's first and foremost be friends in our Rotary groups, right? We have fun together. And number 2 is Rotarians are very much more favorably disposed towards action than they are towards words. You rattling off all the things that you're doing with coats and everything, that is Rotarian. So let us be people continue to be people of action, right? And this is a great quote that probably don't have. This is another 4-letter animal in Africa that I think we should be. We should be oryxes, and that is obliging Rotarians, yammering xenoi. Thank you very much.
next shift.
Yeah, leave it.
Yeah, keep the order. Now, Bill, you're up.
I'm up. There we go. You know, I've had fun. I visited probably, there's 46 clubs in the district, and I think you're number 40 right now. So I was talking to my wife just a few minutes ago before I came in, and I think I have about 5 more left to go. And it's when I become a district governor, we started training 3 years ago. And there's 9 districts here in the Pacific Northwest. And we get to be pretty good friends because we go through this training. They teach me to speak. I'm not supposed to have my name tagged, for instance, because people like this, little things like this, that little hints, and they film me. And you know, it's these little things that you learn to kind of go through. One thing I've noticed when I visit the clubs, and you brought it up, what Paul Harris said was friendship, and really I call it family. And I've seen family over and over at many different clubs. And what happens is that I've seen examples that are just unbelievable. We had a situation happen in May, for instance, the Seattle 4, President-elect Kim Moore, marvelous young lady. She was traveling to Hamburg, and she, from the international convention, she was arrested by Interpol. She had a bad passport. So they accused her of trying to sneak in the country, falsifying the passport. It got pretty ugly. Now, she's been on the plane for 9 hours just to get from Seattle over to Paris. And so what happened in an hour, 2 hours, was really emphasizes what Rotary's about. Phone calls went out. It came to me, originally it came to me because, and the first thing you do when there's trouble is who do you call? Well, I was a district governor-elect. Who do you call as the district governor? That's where everything comes in. At that time was Alan married. So Alan was, went right to voicemail. I went, oh, this is fun. And so then I talked to, then who is, next step is what? Alan's boss. Alan's boss happens to be the zone director. Zone director oversees about 12 districts, 15 districts up and down the West Coast. The zone director was John Matthews, Mercer Island. John Matthews was also the Rotary International Vice President that year too. So I got John's phone number and I said, we got something going on. So I called up John, right to voicemail. I go, okay, now what do I do? Okay, so I'm going to go, I'm only an E, district governor-elect. My year didn't start until July 1st. This was May or June. And so I called up my boss, who started on July 1st too, and that was Jarita. Jarita's down in San Diego area. She has a property management with about 300 employees. And she's working like we all are. And she picked up the phone. She goes, Bill, what can I do? What's going on? And I tell her. She goes, oh my. And I'll contact RI, Rotary International, and it says, expect a phone call back, get all the information that you can possibly get, flight numbers, this type of stuff. So I'm talking to the person in Seattle 4 that got the phone call from Kim Moore, and Seattle 4 was already engaging a bunch of where their tack was. Mark Wright, King 5 News anchor, past president, he calls up Senator Campbell's office. Hey, Senator, this is Mark Wright from King 5 News. We got a Rotarian here, a young lady. How can you help? And they go, we can get somebody down there when it opens up. Remember, there's like an 8-hour difference between here and Paris. So we'll get somebody down there. The chairman of the board for Seattle 4, they run a little bit differently. They have a board structure, a very independent, different kind of structure. But the chairman of the board was David Woodward. David Woodward knows people at the State Department, so he's going back and forth. In the meantime, I'm getting a phone call back from RI, Rotary International. It's kind of like going, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything. It's a passport deal. And I said, I know. And I said, can you do me a favor? I said, give me the phone number for the district governor for Paris. No problem. So I got the phone number. I am in communication with her email. Of course, I had to go to Google Translate. I can go ahead and put it in English and also in French. And so, and she responded back instantly. So it was like, oh, good, I got a contact there. I go, this is kind of an interesting thing that was happening. Think about the people we're touching just for one person that was in charge for Rotary. What ended up is that Interpol decided to put her right back on the plane, first plane out of Paris, and it was going to LA. Like, good. So now we have to find a place, a hotel to put her in and stuff like that. And Jarita is, you know, she's taking John Matthews' spot. And I made a little phone call to Jarita, and I said, I wish I was at the airport and to meet her. She's been on the plane for 9 hours, arrested for 9 hours in a cell, then put on a plane for 9 hours. The young lady's going to be a wreck. And she goes, I'll make a phone call. And within 10 minutes, I got a phone call from the district governor from LA, name's Joe. And him and his wife met, waited for 2 hours. When that plane touched down, they were there with signs and greeted her and helped her through the process. Think about this. District Governor Parrish, District Governor LA, Vice President for Rotary, District Governor-elect, District Governor Mark Wright with Senator Campbell's office, the State Department. I mean, all this happened with the phone call and how we help each other out as a family. And there are other examples I've heard about. Lake Forest Park, young lady stood up and it was tied. Everybody had a tie. You had to read the memo because if you didn't have a tie, you didn't read the memo. And she stood up and she goes, look, this is my dad's tie. My dad was a Rotarian, and he goes, he was in Africa and doing probably a polio plus type of thing with the drops. And there was a coup going on, and everybody was evacuating from the country. You couldn't get out of the country, and he was at the airport, and he had his pin on, and one of the people at the airport saw the pin, says, my dad's Rotarian here in the country, and got him on the plane. You don't know what's going to happen around the world. There's 35,000 clubs, which you mentioned. 1.2 million Rotarians. I go, this is kind of a neat deal. This is family. You'll all receive this magazine, Rotarian. This is August, the green one. This is my classmate, Diane Noriega. Diane is the district governor for the Portland area. And remember, I mentioned that I go through training for 3 years. I know Diane very well. She, like I said, she's a classmate. And she would have not been the district governor unless she was going to be helped by her husband, Carlos. Carlos got advanced cancer and he died within about 3 months. It happened about a year ago. And it was like a shock. But if you read the article closely, what it says is what the club did. The club mowed the lawn, the club cleaned the house, the club helped serve food, went through the whole process. You see, we're family. And we help each other when there's a crisis. It's one of the unique things that we talk about. Paul Harris talked about friendship. It's more than friendship, it's family. So if you have family, what's next? Why do people leave? We did a study. We had 1,800 Rotarians leave in the last 5 years from this district alone, not including Seattle 4. 1,800. And we asked them the reasons why. I finally got a survey done, and I asked them the reasons why. A third of them that responded, a third of them said they weren't having any fun. You gotta be kidding me. I go, family, having fun. What happens is that people get burned out. They're the old 80-20 rule. 80% of the people doing, or 80% of the work doing 20%. It's 80% of the work done by 20% of the people, the old 80-20 rule. And that's one thing that the president of RI is stressing, is to go ahead and share the workload, share the responsibility. And our club my club, the Mill Creek, is just as guilty of it. Our district, our membership chair was one person. And you think about what a membership chair is supposed to do. You're going to have a membership meeting next week. A membership chair is supposed to identify the people coming in, invite the people coming in, supposed to put them in some type of database. You got to track the people coming in. You have to inform the people about Rotary, what Rotary is all about. You have to educate them during that way. When they become a member, you have to go through an orientation process. You make sure that they're involved, and if John is not at the meeting, you're supposed to pick up the phone and say, John, are you okay? Is everything okay? We missed you at the meeting. That's not a one-person job. That's a full-time job, and you can probably spend maybe 8 hours doing that. However, if you've got 5, 6 people on that team doing this type of stuff, we're talking about 10 minutes a week. To share the responsibility is one of the most important things that you can do. We can fix having fun. Family, fun. Do those 2 things and keep that in mind, and this club will it will thrive. The second thing, the third thing I talk about happens to be the fact is that if your family are having fun, to do the things that we do so well. That is the community. You've got the clothing. You've got got a whole list on your website. I happen to be looking at. Phenomenal. I go, that's what we do. We're people of action. I'm going to tell you a quick story. There was a gentleman that spoke at our club a year and a half ago. Oh, polio plus. We used to. I was sitting at Pets when the phone went off, and that cost somebody like $50. Oh, that was like, oh. So it's like going, oh, okay. But I was at my club about a year and a half ago, August, a year ago. And a gentleman was speaking. His name was Adam Cornell. Adam Cornell was the prosecuting attorney, running for the prosecuting attorney's office in Snohomish County. I go, well, this is going to be exciting. Well, see, Adam was he's about 40, 42 years old, but he was running unopposed. And what he got to talk about was his passion. Forget about being elected. He was already elected. He was running unopposed. His passion is youth. See, Adam grew up in the foster care system. And he said it was bad. I went through 6 different families. It was awful. They split up, my brothers, my sisters. I lost track of them. It was really bad. But my life changed around because of 2 people and an organization. A teacher, a coach, and the Kirkland Boys and Girls Club. And I raised my hand and I asked the question, why the Kirkland Boys and Girls Club? Because it was a brand new building. It was perfect. It was a place that I can go. It was a place that I can go feel safe. I can participate and be around kids my own age. Exactly what the Boys and Girls Club is designed to do. You see, in 1985, I was invited to be a Rotarian at the Kirkland Club. In 1987, I happened to be invited by the club put me, involved me, put me in involved. They wanted me to be the fundraising chair, helping raise money for this Boys and Girls Club. In 1989, I was now a director of that Boys and Girls Club, helping them raise money. I got to work with the city founders. I got Lee Johnson Chevrolet. Lee was still alive at that time. Got to work with Mike Lowry, with Swanson Dean and Lowry, one of the big building companies back then. They built a lot of houses and also built, some of the buildings in Seattle. A big construction company. He got to work with. I was 36 years old when this was happening. 36 years old. I got a plaque on the wall, and I was pretty proud of the fact that I helped build a building. I helped work, it's kind of a neat deal at age of 36. Then Adam comes in my life 30 years later, and he's 40, 42. And I go, it's not the building, is it? It's the people that went through that building. Adam is just an example. As Rotarians, we will never know the people that we affect. We will never see their faces. Imagine the 300,000 kids and people that used to get polio. Now multiply that by their family, and we're talking about 1 million, 1.2 million people a year. We'll never see their faces. And the effects that we have, what you do locally with the clothing, what you do with the food banks, all this type of stuff, you'll never see their faces. And it's kind of a neat deal because this is so important because we do this as Rotarians because why we're people of action, as you mentioned. So if you've got family, you've got friends, and we do all this good stuff, how do we do it? Well, you have your golf tournament. Let's say you raise money with the golf tournament, which is very important. We have our auction at Milford. And let's say you want to go ahead and build a playground equipment for the school or for the local park. And you want to put $5,000 sitting on the side. Then you ask, is Aquatic join? $1,000. And you ask Sammamish to join. And Maple Valley to join. All of a sudden, you got $10,000 available for the park. Now set that on the side for a second. We got Rotary International Foundation, #1 rated in the world for the last 12 years. But the best foundation that possibly is. Why is it rated? Because the overhead is low. It's just phenomenal how they do stuff. 1.2 million Rotarians. Let's say they all put in $1. That'd be $1.2 million. It's say $10, $12 million. $100, $120 million. Last year they had $391 million put into that foundation. Now, our district put in $250,000, $250,000 3 years ago. We get half that back. So as it stands at this moment, our foundation has $125,000 that it can use for community projects or global projects. So you have your $10,000. Remember the playground equipment you wanted for $5,000. Now you parlayed it to 10. Then you go to the district, and now all of a sudden we have matching grants. 10 becomes 20. Kind of a neat deal. Now you have 2 swings instead of 1 swing. If you want to go to Guatemala with that playground equipment, the 20 becomes 40. Why? Because the Rotary International's got $391 million. That's where their money's being used, and you get part of that. So now you get 40. You can have 4 playgrounds in Guatemala. That's where the global grant. So the importance is not only to do what you do so well at your own fundraising type thing, but also keep in mind the importance of giving it on the foundation. I have a quite simple. How much time do I got?
Oh, you got time.
I got, okay, yeah, I got another 2 minutes. So it's important to keep this up and to give, and I have a simple goal, 5% increase. 5% increase. So if we give $225,000 at 5%, that's kind of a neat deal. I wouldn't mind an increase of $12,500 more coming in for our district. Is it doable? Yes. Now I do mine automatically. I'd recommend everybody doing it automatically. Only 8% of the Rotarians in the district have what's called direct giving. It's online, it's simple, you see it on the bulletins. You'll probably get more information because this is Foundation Month, Paul Harris Month. I go, direct giving just authorizes Rotary International to charge your debit card or charge your credit card, and I do $85 a month. See, $85 a month is $1,000 a year. $1,000 a year, Paul Harris. Second year, Paul Harris +1, Paul 2, +3, +4. In 10 years, you get to be a major donor. 10 years, instead of having a round one, you get a square one with a diamond heart, fake diamond, but it's still, you've seen them. Those are major donors. And if you give $1,000 a year, you get another piece of bling. It's a little thing that hangs down like this, called the Paul Harris Society. It's kind of a neat deal. But it's simple to do, $85 a month. When I remember in 1987 when they asked us for Polio Plus, they were asking for $75 a year for polio. Inflation, that only amounts to about $200 and some dollars a year to eradicate this. So keep that in mind. I think it's important to do. So we're family. Have fun. Continue doing the good stuff that you do. So now, and there's a way to do it. The next thing, what I usually do when I talk to all the clubs is that, let's talk about the district just a little bit. As I mentioned, there's 46 clubs. I think there's 8 Rotaract clubs and about 15 Interact clubs. And I'm just now starting. I haven't got to the Interact clubs. They're going to be a hoot and a holler to go ahead and meet sometimes at the high schools. This is the year 2019. 2019, you would think that we would be, with the people that we have in Rotary, you'd think we could catch up with technology. But we don't. We are still a paper-driven district. And one thing that started was, and I was fed up with it, is that I'm in Mill Creek, which is like the North Pole. And so when I had to drive down to Kent for an hour meeting and drive back, it blew apart half my day. It took me longer to drive one way than it is for the meeting, and then I have to drive back. I mean, it's like an hour and a half, it's 3 hours. It's a 4 hour trip going back and forth. I said, we're going to go Zoom. we're going to go online conferencing. I go, how hard is that? And they were kicking and screaming, oh, face to face, has to be, and then all of a sudden people really started to enjoy it. So we have Zoom, it's available for the clubs to use. We have 2 accounts. We also are experimenting with the newsletter. The newsletter is, we're kind of going back and forth. We're having trouble with the font. When I read, I skim read, and when I see a headline, I'll just park the headline and then I'll come back and I'll read it more in depth. I read a lot that way. And the newsletter that we had just recently, we went back to the old way, it was 9 pages long. I go, 9 pages, I just skimmed and read it, and I didn't even read it. Now, I like the headlines, I can pick and choose, but the 9 pages, gorgeously done, but it's just keep that in mind. So we're experimenting kind of easier ways how to do this. Training has changed. How many people have gone through the Rotary Academy? Anybody here? Okay, the Rotary Academy was very paper oriented at one time. Yeah, well, it's all online now. We're trying to get it organized. Rotary International has online courses. So imagine an online. You got like 6 classes that you have that are mandatory. One of them is going to be who Paul Harris was, for instance. So those are the mandatory ones, and then you have 10 electives, and you can choose 5. And all of a sudden, you can become. It's online. It's going to be on your own pace, and you go through the process, and afterwards, you're going to be awarded that way. We're working on that. Gene Withers is involved in training. We have a brand new orientation meeting. This is the 3rd meeting, and we're still polishing it up. It's kind of an exciting thing, but we're doing that to help orientation with new members, telling them what Rotary is about the history and things like that. Not the club, because clubs are separate. They have their own way of orientating members because the clubs have their own different activities. Business networking. You hit it right on the nose about Paul Harris. What did he really want? He started Rotary because he wanted to network. He wanted to have people in like minds working together, and he wanted people with high ethics. The 4-way test, for instance. I have an attorney who's a Rotarian. I have a second attorney who's a Rotarian. My insurance person is a Rotarian. My dentist happens to be a Rotarian. My CPA happens to be a Rotarian. My doctor is a Rotarian. My foot doctor happens to be a Rotarian. You get the hint here that, since 1985, I do business with Rotarians. Why? Because we have this right here. We have the 4-way test. Now, these are people I know, I get to see, and what we have developed at no cost to anybody, the district has put together what's called the Business Networking website. It's called Puget Sound Rotary Networking.org. You'll put your business on there, and if you don't want people to contact you, you can put your business. You can use your, you can use your receptionist or whatever to answer the phone. It's just a way that you can do this. It's like a value-added type thing. It's kind of a neat deal. I'm going to leave you at the end here talking about the conference. The conference, first time in 20 years, it's going to be back in Seattle. It's going to be on the waterfront, Bell Harbor Conference Center. It's already built. It's north of the construction area. This is where the cruise boats dock. So they're set up. They have a parking garage for 2,000 cars, and this is a 1-day conference on Saturday. It's going to be. Oh, does anybody know the date? Who's got the date? Who's got the date of the conference?
May 4th.
Pardon me?
May 4th?
No, not May 4th. Wrong. Close though. Wrong month.
Does anybody remember Lisa?
Lisa.
Do you remember the?
No. Oh, okay. Guess what? We had a water bottle for somebody who can think of the date. I said the wrong month.
April 4th.
April. There we go. Yeah, she's close enough. Give me the water bottle.
Nancy, were you the April?
Yeah, she said yeah. So it's, the thing is that this is kind of a neat deal because you don't have to stay at the hotels. If you do want to stay at a hotel, Howard Cohen, who's the district governor nominee behind Kathy, his hotel is across the street from the Space Needle. It's the Executive Inn. It's $109. Great place for the family, so you can. And the district conference is a family-oriented type of conference because it's a 1-day. If you don't like it, you can walk out the door and go up and down the waterfront. It's one of those kind of beautiful things. We do have a Guinness Book of World Record that we're going to be breaking, trying to break first thing in the morning, and then after we're done and we go upstairs with the conference, We're gonna bring in, looks like maybe about 1,000 kids are gonna be coming in from Young Life all across the state, and we're gonna finish up packaging. The packages look like this right here. Yep, thank you. These are emergency rationing. This feeds 6 people. Put it in water, you heat it up. Right now, these are being used in the Bahamas because the hurricane wiped them out. This is where the food's going. We're probably going to do. Snohomish High School did this. They packed 150,000 meals. So this is going to be a fun deal, and we're going to have fun with Mark Wright with Pink 5 News and a few other contacts. We're going to get some really good publicity on this. You can go ahead and take a look at it. I can't see you. I can't find it. Just kidding. And the thing is, the thing to keep in mind about our conference is that our theme is peace through action. If you look at the water bottle, it's peace through action. Why did we pick that? Peace through action. We will never have peace if we don't have clean water. We'll never have peace if we don't feed the hungry. We'll never have peace if we don't clothe those that need clothing. We'll never have peace if we don't have literacy. We'll never have peace if we can't eradicate these diseases like polio and things like this. Why peace through action? Because we're Rotarians. We do stuff as Rotarians, and this what makes me so proud to be a Rotarian. Clubs like this, 46 of them in the district doing good in the community and throughout the world. The district is here. We're a bottom-up organization, not top-down. The way it works is that we're here to support the clubs, and we can support you in many different ways. We have, we're kind of realigning the process a little bit. I think you've got an email recently, along with your membership share, if it's identified. We're having our first Zoom meeting, online meeting, talking about what we're doing for the district to help grow the membership. And we're spending some money and advertising specifically directed towards the clubs and making sure the leads come back to the clubs. That's pretty much it. I'll leave you with a quote, and you need to guess who this is from. It says, you and I are a team. There is nothing more important than our friendship. Who said that? Anybody else? No, close. Good at this. Actually, it happened to be Mike Wazowski from Monsters, Inc.
We got that one.
Close. Paul Harris, close. Any questions, guys? Any questions at all? Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
And Rick, thank you very much for coming. That was great. Does anybody